Mesdames et messieurs,
The greatest festival of our contemporary society, the Olympic Games, is about to begin.
This is going to be close.
Oh! They're all completely gassed! They've given it everything on the global bucket! Oh, yeah! Go! Oh!
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that is an Olympic championship.
Ready.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. Each week we share stories from athletes and people behind the scenes to help you have more fun watching the games. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I have 19 new friends who know how to swing weapons. I am going to be the safest person in Paris.
Got your
So-
little bodyguard around you.
It's going to be fabulous. So yesterday, USA Fencing was kind enough to invite me to their media day. And I want to thank them. They were just amazing and the athletes were great. So we've got some just really fun fencer interviews coming up in June. We talk lightsabers, we talk snacks, we talk shoes. We talk
I'm-
people who offered to let me hold their swords.
See, and I'm surprised you did not say yes.
I did not say yes because I was really, really scared of hurting somebody else. Can you imagine? I go to the media day and I injure one of the fencers.
Oh, they know how to get out of that. Come on.
No, but I'm saying like I drop it and like poke them in the eye. I mean, that's really what I was thinking. Like, not that I was going to swing it around and do something clever, but just, drop it on somebody's foot. But yes, so thank you very much to USA Fencing. It was a really great day.
Excellent. And you got to meet Phil Andrews, TKFLASTAN in person.
I did. And I feel so bad. We didn't take a picture. We were so busy talking. We did not think. I thought of it when I was on the train. So yes, Phil Andrews, we will see him in Paris. We will see his beautiful baby in Paris. So we'll get another shot at that photo
Excellent.
with you. Everyone asked for you.
Oh, that makes me, I feel the love. Thank you, USA Fencing. Speaking of friends, today we have a return visit from our friend Ben Waterworth, one of the hosts of Off the Podium, an Olympics podcast with an Australian and Canadian bent. Ben brings the Aussie, so we wanted to talk with him about the Australian perspective for Paris, as well as get the word on the street about Brisbane 2032. Take a listen. Ben Waterworth from Off the Podium. Welcome back. It is so good to see and talk with you again.
It's a pleasure, Jill. Thank you so much. And Alison, it's so good to join you both. Get rid of Colin. It's just me now, so that's good. But no, it's exciting to be back on the show. Thank you. And for you to both be on our show as well.
I'm disappointed not to talk to Colin since Penny Alexiak just qualified this weekend.
Yes. Very excitable times in Canada. And Summer McIntosh, I think we just worked out, is probably going to win, the Canadian equivalent of Michael Phelps levels of medals. So like about 5-6 medals in one game. So isn't it scary that Canada are kind of good at swimming right now?
Oh,
Like,
fabulous.
it's great, but scary at the same time, right?
The Canadian women have just really come through. I mean, now mostly the women because that's what I watch. But Maggie McNeil, Summer McIntosh, Penny Alexiak, I love the Canadian women swimming team. I'm very excited to go see them.
It's very similar in Australia, I think, that for the last, Canada may be a little bit shorter, but in Australia, at least for the last decade and a bit, the women have been carrying the load for the swimming, which is fantastic to see. And no disrespect to the male swimmers, but we've really seen that in Australia, obviously, with Ariane, Emma, Kaylee. We're really seeing kind of just the dominance there. And obviously, we've still, got the likes of Kyle Chalmers, Zach Stubblety-Cook, winning medals out there as well. But it's kind of the case that we're seeing that in Australia and Canada, it's the female swimmers carrying the load, whereas you guys obviously just have everyone doing it. So men, women, dogs, cats, like everyone's just carrying the load for America, right?
Though for the U.S., it did feel in Tokyo, and even now, we have Katie Ledecky, so the women are the stars of the swim. Caleb Dressel, like I'm dismissing him, but Katie Ledecky is such a once-in-a-lifetime swimmer.
Yeah,
And I would put Ariana Titmus in that category as well. I feel like we've got so many once-in-a-generation swimmers right now.
Yeah,
it's
which
so
is
much
off
fun
the
to
back of
watch.
Phelps, and then I guess even for Australia, we go back to we had Thorpe obviously, and Susie O'Neill, and those types of ones, which I always refer to that particularly as a golden age of swimming. I mean, growing up, that was just they were icons in this country. But now, yeah, that we sort of have this extra generation because I don't think anybody could have ever predicted that Emma McKeon was going to win the amount of medals that she won in Tokyo to become our most decorated Olympian. And the unique thing, and I don't know if you have that with Katie over there in the States, is that I guarantee you Emma can still probably walk around the streets in Australia and still a lot of people wouldn't recognize her. I was at a Women's World Cup game last year and she walked past me and nobody was bothering her. And it's just like, if that was Ian Thorpe, Susie O'Neill, it would be completely different, 20 years ago. But that's the beauty of kind of just athletes like Emma, is that she's so darn good but so unassuming and can kind of just go out there. So, to me, Katie seems that way too. She seems like just like a nice person that probably can just walk down the street, go to Burger King, and then just go home and sit on the couch or something like that.
Speaking of people who can't walk down the street, is Dean Boxall still around? Ariana's coach?
I believe so. Yeah, I think he is. I think he's probably just in training right now, getting ready to break a barrier or two in Paris. And he'll have a crowd this time around, won't he? So people will probably be distracted by him and not watching Ariane win the gold. But no, Dean, I would argue, probably gets more attention on the street sometimes than Ariane. And Ariane's dad, I mean, I often shout from a rooftop that she is Tasmanian. Her dad, very prominent newsreader. I grew up with him being like the main newsreader for one of our networks in Tasmania. So he's still in the media. He's now in Queensland. So he now sort of reads the news on the Gold Coast, I believe. But he is almost out there with Dean Boxall in terms of attention. He gets always interviewed. They always are filming his reactions to when Ariane's winning. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he's always posting fantastic stuff out there. So yeah, the Titmus family are very well known in Tasmania. And there was actually somebody shared a clip in the very early 90s of Steve Titmus interviewing Jess Fox's dad back when Jess Fox was competing in Tasmania, like back sort of in the day. So it was kind of this, weird moment of, dads of two great Australian Olympians now, sort of, 30 years ago. So it's, yeah, we love our families and our coaches of our athletes as well as the athletes too.
Nepo babies.
Yes.
So when does Australia have its swimming trials?
In a few weeks. They're in June. We had the national championships that were kind of a precursor for the trials. I don't know why they didn't then have them, because usually they double up as sort of the swim trials. But it was, they're in June, 10th to 15th of June they are, and they will actually be in Brisbane, which I believe is the first time Brisbane's hosted an event of this magnitude in quite some time. So obviously with the Olympics, they're starting to get a few events there. But which the US ones they're about the same time, are they not?
They're just after. I think they start when Australia's ends.
Wow,
So, yeah,
that's got to be
same
deliberate,
deal.
right? They've planned them, America's gone. Australia have got them then. So then we know what to do. Is that like the first card that you guys are playing against us for swimming?
Yeah, no. Well, here's a card to play. Do you know that they are in an American football stadium?
I think I did see that. And because this is a stadium that they can get like, what, 50, 60, something ridiculous like that, right?
Yes, some ridiculous number of people will be there. And I believe they're going to have something like 3 swimming pools. So they'll have some
Wow.
warm-up pools that they build. They're building it right now. And then the main competition pool.
I love that. I know in was it 2006 we had the World Swimming Championships in Melbourne, and they built a temporary pool in Rod Laver Arena where they have the Australian Open finals. So back then that was, 20,000 people, big deal for Australia. But no, sticking in a football, that's brilliant. And knowing what you guys do, you're going to sell that out. It probably already is sold out. Are you guys going to head along and go try and get a ticket for it?
I am going. I'm accredited.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I'm going to some of it. I don't know if I'll go to all of it because it's a long event for us and for a lot of swimmers. Just qualifying for Olympic trials is a huge accomplishment. So it's a pretty big event.
That's amazing to see that. And it's just, I mean, look, I say this in the most respect. It's so American. That's not a negative. That's a positive. I think that's brilliant. And I to Australia, Stick it in Stadium Australia. Stick it in the MCG. Let's get 80,000, 100,000 people. Because I'm telling you now, you do it. We love our swimming here, and I think you would sell it out here as well.
So we mentioned Jessica Fox,
Mm-hmm.
paddler. We mentioned Ariana Titmus.
Yep.
Who else is coming and taking over Paris from Australia?
Oh, it's a great question. We've just had, with the qualifying series in Shanghai, a couple of our gold medalists from Tokyo on the cusp of coming back. So we had Logan Martin in the BMX, gold medalist from Tokyo. He's tracking quite well. Keegan Palmer, we stole him from you guys. Thank you very much. In the skateboarding, he's doing quite well out there as well. So, kind of tracking a few people when it comes to that level. We're sort of spread out on a lot of different sports, and some sports I think too where Australia doesn't necessarily have a lot of success we might. I know in diving, for example, we've had a couple of world champions sort of in the last couple of years. Cassia Russo won gold medal in the 10-meter platform, first ever world champion. We obviously had Matt Mitchum win a gold back in Beijing on that level of things, but he's been doing really good things out there and is a real chance of a gold medal. And diving is one of these sports for Australia where we generally get medals. We'll get a bronze here or there, possibly a silver, but gold is very few and far between for us. So, we're really kind of keeping track on that. We've recently had a few field hockey athletes that are coming up on the show, and we've always been a country that's good at field hockey. We've won gold in both the men's and the women's. The men's team in particular, called the Kookaburras, have sort of always been one of the world's best teams, but there always seems to be a bit of a kryptonite come the Olympics. Famously in Athens, they got an extra time winner to get our first and only ever gold in men's field hockey. And then we heartbreakingly lost in a penalty shootout to Belgium in Tokyo to get silver. So I've got a feeling that on the 20th anniversary of that famous gold from Athens, that we might kind of crack through for a long-awaited second gold in that. And the women as well. The Hockeyroos haven't medalled since Sydney, and they have a bit of a quarterfinal curse. But the positive news for Australia in women's field hockey is if we win a quarterfinal, we always go on to win gold medal. So that's kind of a positive. So if we can break that curse, I think we can do it. So I think a few of our team sports will be out there, really positive out there. And even on the sport climbing side of things, actually, we had Oceana McKenzie on not too long ago, and she's been doing really good recently, getting some very high finishes in World Cups. I believe she was on the podium recently, 4th as well. So a sneaky chance there for Australia, a medal that we've never won in that sport. It's only been in the Olympics one time, of course. But yeah, and it's often the case with Australia. We often will, particularly in that second week, once we've put swimming to bed, we've kind of gone to all those sports and we're like, yeah, okay, we're done. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, someone will win a medal in something that we weren't expecting, and then we absolutely love them. I'm thinking Chloe Esposito, modern pentathlon, 2016, still the highlight of my Summer Olympics watching in my life. So I'll go with that. I'd like to, on the flip side of that, America, it's a weird question to ask you guys. What are you guys going to win medals in? Because it's more like, what aren't you going to win medals in? But are there any particular sports that you're tracking really highly in that maybe a lot of people don't consider the US as a sport that you win medals in?
Well, I am hoping that Deanna Price in hammer throw has a good Olympics. This would, if she's got to get through trials, but in Rio 2016, she got sick right before competition. In Tokyo 2020, she had an amazing performance at the Olympic trials, and then something happened in her hip, I believe, she ended up her foot, yeah, and she ended up. She competed, didn't do great, and then had some surgeries afterwards and has been on the comeback and looks really good. But it's just like, come on, there can't be a nicer person out there than Deanna Price. And she really deserves to have a good games, I think. Poor thing.
I always like hearing those stories, though. That's, yeah.
Yeah, and we had her on multiple, sort of ended up doing multiple shows because she just had such fantastic stories and was so generous with, and we're watching Breakin' a little bit. We talked to
isn't it?
we talked to Sunny Choi,
Yeah.
who's going to be one of the older breakers there, and I laughed, older. She's like 30 something. And it's a one and done for breaking, surprisingly.
Yeah.
That LA did not choose it, but that may be somewhere where we see some unexpected medal, an unexpected looking podium.
We've talked a lot about that. We had Australia's B-girl on a couple of days ago, and we've had her on before, Rachel Gunn. She's fantastic. Also, it's similar to Sunny, like in her 30s, considered older, but of course, it's laughable in a way. But it's how do you think that decision is going to reflect on LA? Because we're on the page here that they've not thought about this, and that breaking is going to be the star of Paris. I think that people, from what they've seen in the qualifying series, it's one of these sports that you sort of question, but when you watch it, you realize this is fun, this is great, and people are going to get behind it. And yeah, we're on the page that LA are going to look at the reaction that this is going to get in Paris and think, uh-oh, we should have maybe included it.
Not from Americans.
No?
Anyone I mention how breakdancing is in the Olympics is so dismissive of it. I think in other countries, they're going to be disappointed that it's not in the
But you're the
LA
home
because
of breaking. You invented this sport.
Yes, we understand.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe it's an East Coast, West Coast thing, like, New York,
Maybe.
LA. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it'll have a moment, but I'm very, very curious as to what went on in all of those negotiations for sports on the LA program, since the IOC delayed the announcement of sports, and there were so many team sports added in. What was going on there? And also, where did World Dance Sport go wrong in
Yeah.
not being able to get back on the program? I
'Cause
mean,
it's
it's just always interesting how sports come this whole sports are coming and going now. It's a little disconcerting in a way, because if you're a sport that's on the bubble, like karate was in
Oh,
for
yeah.
Tokyo, I thought it
Yeah.
did well. It seemed to be interesting, but then of course it's out for Paris and it's out again. So I don't know how to frame it in my mind along with like demonstration sports, because demonstration sport, you got well, this is a test. Did the test go well or did it not? But you get the host selection. Well, these are full medal sports. It's a real
Mhm.
sport in the Olympics, and then all of a sudden it's not, and it's a little
It's
frustrating.
it is very interesting, and it's very much like what the Commonwealth Games have done for a while, is that it's sort of the hosts, they have their core sports, but then they can basically choose what they want. And you see a lot of rotation in the Commonwealth Games. It's hard to keep track of what sports there and what's not. And, while I like that, it is interesting on the Olympic side because, yeah, you mentioned demonstration sports, and they were always a fun bit because you could often put a very local sport. I mean, Melbourne had Australian football as a demonstration sport. Australian football's never going to be an Olympic sport, but it was fun for people to be able to come to an Olympics, a big worldwide event, and see something like that. You'd have American football. Karate would no doubt be that case for Japan. But it's sort of, yeah, I mean, we always feel bad for these sports. Like, we're big advocates for baseball and softball to just stay on the damn
Oh,
calendar every 4 years.
don't get me started on
Poor
softball.
athletes. They just get teased every 4 years. You're on, you're off. You're on, you're off. But I mean, breaking to me, it baffled me that it didn't get kept on because the IOC was so advocating for this youthful sport. Like, let's keep with the kids. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then it was scrapped so quickly, particularly from an American Games. And yeah, okay, LA, not New York, but still, like, it's the home of hip hop and the culture. There's still a very strong hip hop culture on the West Coast. And then the sports they added, like, I, for
Cricket.
one, would have guaranteed cricket was going to be a Brisbane sport. So it surprised me that they enabled that in LA. And squash. I mean, I am 100% behind squash and cricket being Olympic sports. 100%. Squash, so overdue to be an Olympic sport. But to me, they're both very Commonwealth favoured sports. So that, to me, is where Australia would have been the ones fighting hard and let's wait for Brisbane. So it surprised me that LA were the ones that did it. Lacrosse doesn't surprise me. Flag football doesn't surprise me. But yeah, it's fascinating that you've got all these team sports. The one question I'll ask you, because we talked about this in the news episode, rather than culling sports and being like, look, we've got to keep a quota of 10,500 athletes, we've got to keep a quota of this amount of medals, cost saving, all this kind of stuff. Can we just be like, look, you're saving money on keeping, you've not built new stadiums, you've done this, you've done that, you've cost cut here. Let's add another 100 medals. Let's add another 3,000 athletes. And then that way, you can kind of appease to these issues that you're having. Should the IOC maybe just be not so strict when it comes to the quota of the number of athletes and the number of medals that they have?
Well, I mean, when they've had this quota, I think Paris is the only one who's going to stick to it.
Mm,
Out of,
true.
Tokyo went way over, Brazil, Rio was way over, LA will be way over because there's
Mm.
no way you can cut that down. But I'm with you. If you have a games where they're not building any venues and they have temporary venues for things, why not add more sports? The big problem is just the cost of building a new stadium and then maintaining it afterwards. But if you can have temporary stuff, and I mean, temporary does cost money, but at the same time, it's not something that you have to maintain afterwards. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see because then LA will pioneer this whole like we're able to do way more sports than you thought and have a bigger games. It'll be interesting to see what Brisbane gets to do. And it's hard because
If we have a stadium.
Oh, we'll get to that. We want to talk GABA.
But I mean, the fact that Brisbane will have to choose its sports program before LA goes on, and the fact that LA had to choose its sports program before it could really see what Breakin did. I don't know. And with Breakin, we've just talked about like two of the big athletes are in their 30s. Is that a youth sport then? Who knows? Maybe and it's small. There's not even that many athletes in there. I don't know.
I'm going to be the opposite person. I'd like to see it shrink
Oh,
because I feel
okay.
like the Summer Olympics has become so big that you've segmented your audience. You have 30 events going on at any one time. You don't have that everyone watching the men's 100-meter dash. You don't have that unifying element that I think is so important to the Olympics when you have it so spread and thin, where you take the audience and say, okay, you can watch. And now we've got feeds, and now you've got multi cameras, and you really can watch everything at once. And are we losing the unifying power of the Olympics? And should we move some things to the Winter Olympics that don't necessarily have ice or snow, but we could spread the wealth a little bit?
Well, I mean, I think Brisbane is going to be a great model for the fact that we're going to be in winter in Australia. So I think just combine them for Brisbane. I'm trying to get Australia to get into ice hockey. That's all I'm trying to do. But I mean, it is a great point because I think, while you do have, this ability now where you can watch whatever you want to, literally. Like if you want to watch the judo, the dressage, the archery, instead of the 100 meters or the 1500 meters in swimming, you can, because you jump on your NBC app, your Channel 9 app, your CBC app, whatever it is, and you can do it. It's fantastic. We're living in that golden age now where we're never missing out on what we want to watch. But there was also something unique back when we all remember growing up, where you kind of had your one feed, NBC, Channel 7, whatever it was. You had to watch what it was. And I'm sure it was the same at NBC. Generally, it's swimming for the first week and athletics for the second week. And if you saw a highlight of something else, you were lucky. But it was that level of unification that you touch on, Alison, because, I think back to Australia's most famous Olympic moment of all time, Cathy Freeman winning the 400 meters in Sydney. Everyone in this country was sitting in front of a television that night watching that event. I don't think anybody would be doing that in Australia today for anything, even if it was Emma McKeon going for her record, whatever number of gold. He's Katie Ledecky versus Ariane Titmus. It wouldn't happen on that level that it does. And it's interesting. I can see what you're saying. I maybe don't necessarily agree with it, but I think that there is an argument there for it, because you're right, that unification, that level of stopping the world for events at the Olympics maybe isn't quite there when it used to be.
And maybe we'll see it come back because we've had 2 COVID games.
True.
So it'll be interesting to see. The thing that you touched on, Ben, was you see whatever the TV networks decide to air.
Yeah.
So you all watched Cathy Freeman because Cathy Freeman was on. We watched, Carl Lewis because Carl Lewis was deemed important for NBC. So even though you had smaller games, you still had so many sports that did not see the light of day because TV producers didn't think that they were worth showing, or there wasn't a good enough story for the country's audience. So I still think that the thing about having feeds and everybody segmented is that it's a little easier to see sports that you may not have known existed, And especially for kids who want to get into sports who don't like soccer or don't like basketball, and that's all they see on a regular basis, for them to see something like taekwondo or fencing for the first time, that could really spark something in them. And it's kind of nice that it's a lot more accessible, but we have to, I mean, there's always going to be a give and take. You have to give up something to get something
It's also
with
great too
anything.
that, and I'm sure it's the same there too. But I mean, what Peacock, you do have to pay a subscription fee, but correct me if I'm wrong when it comes to what NBC does during the Olympics. But here, Channel 7 have done it, Channel 9 are about to do it. All of the Olympic channels are actually free. So like if you download the app, and if you want to watch dressage, you want to watch judo, you want to watch, handball, particularly, sports like that in Australia, which we're never getting coverage of, you just download the Channel 9 app, you sign up for an account, and you can watch it for free. I know when they first did this model, or I think when 9 last had the Olympics for London and Vancouver, there was maybe like a $10 fee that you paid for the month. Channel 7 did that once where like you paid $10 instead of the free one and you got no ads or something like that. But I've always applauded, and we've got laws in Australia that obviously keep certain events on free-to-air TV, so, puts it so you can't put it behind a paywall. But I always think that makes it a lot more accessible, because I look at, say, the men's and women's World Cups, which, particularly on the men's side of things, is arguably a bigger sporting event. You have to pay to watch all the matches. They will only really show Australian games and the big games on free-to-air TV. So, yeah, I don't know. Is that a thing that NBC do, or do you have to pay Peacock to watch all the sports if you want to watch them?
Ben, this is America.
Okay, well, there you go.
So
you ask a dumb question.
The only thing that will be completely free is what is on the main NBC channel that goes over the airways. But then there's also the multiple NBC cable channels. And if you are not a cable subscriber, you cannot get those feeds for free.
Interesting. Okay. Which do you, I mean, because I know Colin talks a lot that in Canada, and I don't know if it's just a case because he lives nearest to the border or if it's all of Canada, he gets the NBC feed, so he can actually watch American coverage. If you're near the border of Canada, can you get CBC and watch the Canadian coverage if you want to?
You might be able to. I know my husband learned how to count in French and Spanish from 2 different Sesame Streets growing up, because he grew up in the Detroit area, so he was close enough to a border.
There you go. That's educational. I watched the wrong Sesame Street, clearly.
Yeah, I think it's if your VPN reads it, or your computer connection reads you as possibly in more than one place.
Which I'm so fascinated, which obviously you were there in Beijing. I've never actually been out of Australia for an Olympic Games. I was in New York for the Paralympic Games for Beijing. So it was fascinating to watch NBC coverage and see another country's coverage of an Olympics. But this will be the first time when I'm in Paris that I won't be in my own country to watch an Olympics. Obviously, I'll be out there watching them in person, so I'm not really too concerned about watching them on TV. But there are going to be moments where I'm in the media center or I'm going to be watching highlights or things like that. So did you find that an interesting experience? Because Olympics are a very national coverage sport, right? Like you are very much designated the country you are in, what you are watching. So was that an interesting experience being in another country to try and watch an Olympic Games that wasn't the United States?
It was. Did you see much of the coverage? I don't remember watching coverage on the Paralympics, but I do know that in my hotel for the Olympics, they had TVs in the dining area. So there would be basically the Chinese version of the morning show set up, and they had a set. It just looked exactly the same as what any, I think, television station does, except for it was just in Chinese, and they'd have they'd replay a lot more Chinese athletes, but it wasn't so different. But it was comforting, but also different in a way. And I remember during Rio, I happened to be in Winnipeg for a weekend, and got to see a little bit of the CBC coverage, which was awesome. And that's when Penny Alexiak was winning right at that moment. So that was a lot of fun to see. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do in Paris, because I think of Paris being nonchalant, even though they're supposed to be big sports fans. But I feel like they're just like, what? We don't care about anything, especially these Olympics.
Oui.
I'm glad you did the bad French accent.
Yeah, I'm glad, we're all thinking it right. Yeah. So yeah, it's fascinating, I think, and also I guess being in another country that's not an English speaking country as well. I have desires to be in LA for be it working or visiting in 2028, and of course English speaking country. If you obviously come to Brisbane, it's going to be a similar thing. But it's that it's that interesting level of being able to watch. Because I remember being in Thailand watching a Grand Prix, and that was Thai commentary, and it was sort of watching a sport that I watch religiously, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this isn't in English. It's fascinating, but I think sort of going through my role there through the AOC and everything, it's sort of, we've discussed options about how we're going to be able to, because, it'd be important for us to stay on track with the Australian athletes a lot of the times. And even though we're going to be working hand in hand with Channel 9 on the ground there in Paris, they probably just can't plug and play into our computers and give us their feed. So there might be, as you say, VPNs and things like that. Because I do that with the Chasing Gold program that Peacock did, which it was fantastic. Really great perspective to get education on some American athletes that I'm not overly familiar with.
Well, it's interesting because NBC has really been trying to boost interest in the Olympics. I'm very curious to know like what people care about, the general public, just because I work at home alone and I don't talk to people very much. And so do people want to watch the Olympics? Do they care about the Olympics? And there's just seems to be this impression of nobody watches the Olympics anymore and they
Mm,
don't know what it is and they don't care about it, which to me is very sad because the Olympics are amazing. But with two COVID games and everyone going through a pandemic, and for us being two games in Asia, which was great for your time zone, but not great
very
for
great.
us. So people, even with feeds, people I think weren't watching as much. And so there's a lot of fear that, oh, people just aren't watching the Olympics anymore. And NBC paid billions of dollars for the rights to host them. So they're really trying to go all out with programming for Paris and especially way ahead of time, getting people just in the know with trying to understand the athletes and the sports and parsing out who's going to be commentating. Just there, everything's coming out in dribs and drabs to keep you engaged, I think.
Snoop Dogg and Johnny Weir, that's all you want, right? But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the thing that would fascinate me to hear from your perspective of that, because again, all jokes aside about America wins everything, I do imagine that does make it very tricky to stay on top of who to pay attention to, because Australia goes into an Olympics and, we generally are going to win somewhere between 12 and 16, 17 gold medals, which is standard for us. And for the most part, these athletes by the end of it because there's only a handful of gold. You guys are winning that in a day pretty much. So like, of course you're going to focus on your, Simone Biles, your Katie Ledeckis, your Noah Lyles, these types of people. I get that. But then when you're getting an athlete winning a gold in archery or judo, like how do you find people stay on top of you winning so many medals to be able to then get the attention on some of these athletes, particularly in the lesser sports?
Well, I think the sad thing for American sports coverage and spectators is that we are constantly told if they don't win a gold medal, they don't matter. That's the only achievement an American athlete can hang their hat on, which is so frustrating because so many of these athletes are incredible stories. And whether they, win gold, silver, or bronze, or just make it to the final, it could be such an amazing story. But because the US is win or bust,
Mm,
you lose a lot of that. And now I feel like it's become win multiples. So if Katie Ledecky doesn't break the record, then she failed.
mm,
What happened to Simone Biles in Tokyo was the biggest news because she failed. And the way that that was discussed also was very interesting. How by pulling out the way she did, she was a traitor. She was un-American. She was this, evil enemy of the state. And that was very frustrating to watch. And I mean, I was frustrated with her for a total different level, but she didn't deserve what she got. And I think a lot of these athletes who go in as gold medal favorites don't deserve when they get the hate
Yeah.
they get when they lose.
Yeah.
And
100% agree.
and it's hard because for a lot of the athletes, they don't make a ton of money. So
Mm.
what we like are people who can do multiple games because we remember them from the last time. So it's a lot easier to keep that story going than it is to concentrate on somebody who may be one and done or is not going to, like Allison said, produce a gold medal. That also makes it hard for some people. And for athletes, there's pressure of, well, how do I sustain a career and as a pro athlete when maybe my sport doesn't have a ton of financial opportunities? How long do I keep doing this thing that I love? How long do I keep does my body allow me to do it kind of thing? And do you get any kind of Olympic glory from anyone? I mean, I think that's what we're all here for. You and us, we all focus on a lot of athletes that don't get a whole lot of coverage otherwise.
And you'd find that too, that people would question you, why do you do an Olympic podcast? They're only every 4 years, every 2 years,
Mhm.
and what do you talk about in the other periods? Well, what can't you talk about? That's exactly it. Are you finding too that given you're hosting the next Olympics, that is there almost a little bit more pressure on American athletes this time around because you've got this cycle in the lead up to LA where funding is going to be increased for sports, all this pressure that's going to come with the home Olympics because you want to go out there and be even more dominant than you are. So that this is almost like a precursor for what to see in 4 years because, we're going to see this in LA in 4 years' time ahead of Brisbane. It's going to be, we're hosting the next one. So we want to go out there and show that we're doing good. And then 4 years later, we're going to do even better.
I think LA wants that, but I don't know if they're getting it. I'm not sure LA is getting the press it wants out of Paris. It feels like once Paris is done, then we'll pay attention to LA. It feels very far away. It doesn't feel like people are really talking about the LA Olympics much. So I'm not sure that the American athletes feel pressure. I know some of them feel pressure in terms of they want to continue their careers. They want to stick around for LA. And if Team USA has a bad Olympics in Paris, then I think we're going to hear, oh, this was a disaster. What happened? And now we're hosting. We'll be embarrassed. So I think
Right.
once Paris is done, we'll hear good or bad.
We hear from the Paralympians that there's not the pressure, there is the excitement that hopefully they'll have more eyes on Paralympics and that in the lead up to Los Angeles, there's going to be more and more attention paid to the Paralympic side of things. So that is also a hope for me. And I don't think there's necessarily the same pressure to do well. I think that a lot of the pressure is self-imposed because they're high performance athletes who obviously want to do their best. But there's a hope that the Paralympic movement can get a lot more visibility that they lost after. I would say they lost it after London.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I've seen like the time we're recording this, it was 100 days to go till the Paralympics. And a lot of heavy press around that here in Australia, which is great to see. Because, I guess they've always got the issue of being after the Olympics, right? So therefore, that attention is sometimes a little bit hard for people to put on that when people are focusing on the Olympics ahead of that. I want to ask a question though, and the important question around LA 2028, the handover ceremony and the closing ceremony, because this is one of those things that I always have in the back of my mind. As much as I'm excited for an Olympic Games, of course I am, but I always like to think, well, what are they going to do for the handover ceremony? And often the handover ceremonies recently have been better than the actual opening ceremonies for that Olympics. So I'm thinking Paris, giant CGI flag on the Eiffel Tower, thousands of French people celebrating on the streets. I'm thinking of the late, great Shinji Abe coming up as Mario in the Rio closing ceremony. I'm going all the way back to Atlanta to inflatable kangaroos on bikes. What are we going to get for LA handover ceremony in Paris?
Well, we'll get another fabulous dress from Paris Mayor Anna Hidalgo. That will be for sure. That woman knows how to put on an outfit for a ceremony. I don't know. I hope it is not what we expect. Like, I hope they don't go with the LA Hollywood angle.
So you're not just supposed Leonardo DiCaprio is going to stand out there like, hi, everyone, come to LA.
Yeah, like I hope they go with historic 32, 84. We're keeping that connection because Paris 24 to 24, we have that centennial. So I'm hoping a little bit of history. I'm hoping.
I like that. I don't know if Jill, if you
Jill
had
wants
anything to add
to
on
see
that, do you have
Sam
any
the Eagle
ideas?
make an
Or
No,
appearance.
it would be interesting if Sam the Eagle made an appearance. He might. That's a
Yeah.
good point. He might show up. I kind of wonder if they're going to go the surfing, sand, sun, beach angle to LA.
California, right?
Right.
Yes.
That element, or I don't know. They'll bring
So
some
the
cars
thing-
on the stadium.
It's so like this is what we've talked about recently, that it's been so long since you guys have had an Olympics, winter or summer. Like it's generally every decade you have at least one Olympics. I mean, this will be 26 years between Salt Lake and LA, and 32 years since Summer Olympics. So it's so many people have grown up in the States without witnessing an Olympics. So I'm just so intrigued to see it. And I mean, LA 84 was such an influential games for the Olympics that, yeah, I don't think you can't not rely on that history and just everything on that. I mean, I can't not think they're going to do something Hollywood. I know that's disappointing, Alison, but like, I mean, it's LA. Like, I mean, what do you think of when you think of LA? It's Hollywood, right? So there has to be at least one actor either in a video or the set. I don't know. Like, I can't not imagine that Leo's going to show up, or Meryl Streep, or someone, right? Has to be. Who would be your choice? You had to choose a
Clooney.
Hollywood actor.
Clooney. I'd take
Clooney,
Clooney.
yes. Well, he's about to do Broadway, so we might be busy. So,
Oh yeah, that's right.
but Clooney would be a
I'm
good
trying-
one. I'm on board
I'm
with
trying
Clooney.
to think, are there any, we had the old days where all the athletes would become actors. Do we have anybody floating around who's like played an
Oh,
Olympian?
I can't think of anyone at the top of my head. No.
No, I
Yeah.
can't off the top of my head.
I'd be. I mean, I know wasn't an athlete, but he danced a lot. Kevin Bacon. That's just my choice. So
Terry
Jason
Crews.
Momoa.
Yeah,
Terry-
Jason.
yeah, true. I was going to say Kiefer Sutherland, but he's Canadian, so that doesn't work.
Matt Damon. Just haul Matt Damon out.
Yeah,
Have him do
Julia
something
Roberts.
action.
I'm pro Julia
Gotta
Roberts.
be someone though who's native to California.
Yeah,
We
true.
gotta
I mean,
go.
just take a pick, right? Throw a stone. Put him
So
on a
Nepo
surfboard.
baby. Second
Yes,
Nepo
exactly.
baby reference.
Can I actually just also ask too, just on the opening ceremony? I know we sort of touched on the Sen idea, I believe, last time, but what are your thoughts now that we're this close? And also, I'm putting it out there, Cauldron, top of the Eiffel Tower. Don't know if they can make it happen, but I'm sure they've asked the question. That should be the flame. That's just my opinion. I mean, are we excited for this idea now that we are so close to it and we're all going to be there in Paris, whether we get to see a boat float down the Seine or not? Oh, there's America. There's Australia.
I'm very hopeful that it will come off and that the plan A will work. Very, very hopeful about this. Knocking on all of the wood. It would be amazing, and the only time they're ever going to pull that off, because nobody else is going to try to do that. They may think about it, but when they hear the stories of, oh my gosh, this is what happened and this is how hard it was to pull it off, nobody will ever want to attempt that again.
I
will
don't know,
say.
Jill. Brisbane, we don't have a stadium. They might not have a choice. Might have to
That's
put it
right.
down the
You
Brisbane
might
River.
put everything on the river.
The Brisbane River's a nice river, so
It is a nice river.
Yeah.
So this is a perfect chance for me to ask you, Ben, in terms of how it plays in Australia. Certainly in American conservative media, it's all terrorist all the time. That that Paris is going to be this huge risk in terms of the safety of American athletes. Are you hearing that as well?
Not a lot, to be honest. I mean, there are definitely news stories and there's questioning of it, but I haven't seen a lot of that here. I've spoken to people who are concerned. I've spoken to people who have been to Paris recently and are going, how are they even prepared? They're hosting an Olympics in a couple of months. But this is the first Olympics I can remember since London, maybe, that there hasn't been a lot of talk on, oh, they're not ready, oh, it's not going to be safe. No, at least in the media I haven't. But again, talking to people and being in a few meetings here and there, yes, there is concern. But I haven't heard much outside of that. So, no. I think we're just all focused on again, the news story that I saw during the week, which is very Australian, was 2 former Olympic athletes who are on the Channel 9 commentary team don't like each other. So there's already tension in the commentary box for the Olympics. So that was the news story that I saw during the week around the Olympics. So it's very Australian news.
Well, Jill and I got a little chippy before we started recording, so it wasn't us. We'll just put that out there.
I didn't want to mention that. That's just why Colin's not here. We had a big blue the other day. We were just like, no, he threw his...
Were any chairs thrown again?
I just don't go near him with chairs. Like if I'm in a room and there's a chair in the room with him, not entering it. You know, I've already got one child now with Cherry. Like I don't need another one. It's hard to look after Cherry. He's a diva. I find it interesting, I think, though, because obviously Brisbane still does hit the news here a little bit. And so a lot of people are talking that. And the interesting thing with that is that there's obviously going to be an election in Queensland later this year. And more than likely, there will be a new government in Queensland later this year. So then there's going to be questions around that. So I'm very intrigued because I know on the ground in Paris, there's going to be a bit of a Brisbane 2032 delegation, as you would expect. So, yeah, that's to me where the coverage, because before Tokyo, 3 years ago, that's when it was announced, right? It was excitement. It was 3 days before the opening ceremony. It was excitement. We've got the Olympics again. Yay. And it's 11 years away. We've got so much time. I look at it now. Has anything happened in the last 3 years? I don't think so. They launched a website with a flyover video this week. Cool. So 3 years on from the announcement, I'm questioning it myself now too.
Well, do you think it's too soon to be announcing games? Should they go back to 7 years? Or are we getting into this whole, we've got the commission that selects and then puts, then they recommend and the executive board votes and then the membership rubber stamps that. But it just felt like Brisbane got pushed through so that we can get stuff locked into place on the IOC side and not necessarily worry about like how much that impacts the host cities. And Brisbane is seeing just lots of turmoil with the whole stadium debacle.
Yeah, thanks, John Coates, for getting us the Olympics and then basically screwing us over with the venues.
That was fabulous.
Yes. Look, I'm a traditionalist, Jill, and I'm sure you and Alison are both the same. I loved the 7-year announcement. I loved the election campaign. I loved the big ceremony where you had the rounds of knocking cities out, and it was just exciting and fun, and they're never going to do that again. So on that level, yes, I think they should go back to it. But I see why they do it. I'm not completely opposed to them giving a longer turnaround for it because it maybe would help cities that aren't Paris, that aren't LA, that aren't these big global world cities prepare. So, looking ahead to 2036, if you're going to India or Egypt, Istanbul, it's going to give them a lot more time to, you would think, get their ducks in a row, having said that around Brisbane. But I think it just adds your pressure to it in a way because Brisbane gets this bid and wins it based on legacy venues and this is going to happen. But I think what we're seeing here is just stupid decisions that are being made, just like last minute decisions have been making. Because I think a wider issue when it comes to Brisbane is it's the third biggest city in Australia, but it's maybe got some of the worst stadiums in our country. Like the Gabba is a great venue. I've been to many a football match there. I've been there. It's in a great location. It needs an update, not just because of an Olympics. This is a venue that was crying out for an update before the Olympics were even on the radar. And that's an issue. And outside of that, Brisbane doesn't really have a stadium. I mean, they've got Suncorp, Lang Park, whatever you want to call it. That's a rectangular venue, which for Australia is not fantastic because we play cricket. We play Australian football, which, we need kind of a multi-purpose venue that's round in a way that can accommodate these. So I think Brisbane's got a lot more problems outside of just having an Olympics because, I'm from Tasmania, I'm from Hobart. We just got given a license for an Australian football team. They're about to build a brand new stadium. So we're going to have a more advanced stadium in Hobart, a city of 250,000 versus a city of 3 million people, which is the third largest city in Australia hosting an Olympic Games. So yeah, it's long-winded way of saying that I see the positives of having a cycle where you're giving a city 12 years. But have an actual plan in place to do it. And I have the utmost respect for John Coates for what he's done for Olympics in Australia, but he went so far to get us the Olympics again, maybe a little too far, depending on what you believe. But then to all of a sudden be the person who earlier this year just goes, hey, so about those stadiums, not going to work. Let's do something different. And then just throw it into turmoil. Like, it's embarrassing. And it's just, I really hope that they fix this, because there needs to be something done to make these games a spectacle like we put on for Sydney. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say I like the fact that the 7-year cycle seemed to be working. What I like about the new commission system is that we don't have the beauty pageant, because I think the beauty pageant
Yeah.
just was so expensive, with so many cities spending a lot of money on nothing. But the positive of having 12 years to put together games is that you have more time for all those infrastructure projects. Like, Brisbane really needs some public transportation up and down the Gold Coast there.
Yep.
And things like when we were looking at Atlanta 1996 in depth, we talked with some people who said, look, we built miles and miles of sidewalks and put in all these trees, and that's all stuff that the Olympics kind of, having that deadline and having that event that the world was coming to, really got us, kicked our butts into gear and made us do something. Whereas the problem becomes when every developer goes, oh, this is an ATM, I can build a big stadium and make a lot of money on that, versus the stuff that needs to be done. I don't know. It's just really frustrating.
It's never going to be perfect. There's never going to be a perfect system, because I think also issues around an advisory board and a recommended city. We're going to go to the conversation phase. Is there's not enough, like, we don't know the process, so that's where you question it a little bit more. Like, that's where the questions around John Coates and everything around Brisbane come from. It, you know what I mean? And the dialogue phase, like, kind of what we're seeing with the Winter Games at the moment too. It's sort of, it's great that we've got 2 cities in the pipeline and everything, but it's kind of like, well, what's happening? Why are other cities kind of not even being invited to a conversation? But yeah, I think, one thing I've learned since living in Sydney is that my experience of coming here, when you would talk about the Olympics, or you'd go out to Homebush and everything along those lines, is a lot of people would say like, oh, it's a bit of a white elephant, it's too far out of the city. It doesn't get used enough. It hasn't stood the test of time. But since I've lived here, I've found that the opposite, because I go out to that area of Homebush quite a bit for events. The arena there is, if you want to watch basketball, concerts, the Kudos Bank Arena, that's the indoor venue where you go and watch it. Stadium Australia right next door, during the Women's World Cup, it was absolutely perfect. You still have big games there. Don't really want to mention it, but like when you had the Taylor Swift concert there the other month, like, that's where you have it. It's the second largest stadium in Australia. So it serves its purpose. And without the Olympics, Sydney would have been lacking on stadiums itself. This is a city not short on stadiums. And Sydney is a very big city where they're all spread out. So it depends on where I go to an event, which stadium I go to, which can be frustrating. Melbourne, much better. Their stadiums are all very close and all very well put together, and very much pro-Melbourne. But it is something now that when you talk to people and you see what has been the lasting legacy of the Olympics in Sydney, the transportation here in Sydney is second to none. It's such an easy city to navigate for public transport. Talking about that area of Homebush, that was just an abattoir. It was a nothing area. Now it's a developed area. Like, it's an area where people want to live and everything along those lines. So I lived in Brisbane. It's a great city. I was obviously there for the Gold Coast Commonwealth Games, and I saw what that did for that area. And the beauty of Brisbane and the Gold Coast is it's kind of all merging into one. You never say that to somebody in Brisbane, that you're basically the same as the Gold Coast. They get very offended, but it is the same place. I'm sorry. Gold Coast just have a few more beaches and a few more bogans, but it's what the Commonwealth Games did clearly showed that area can host an Olympic Games. I have no question in my mind that Brisbane will host a fantastic Olympic Games. It's a great city. It's a great place to have that. I just hope they can get their bleep together to make sure that it does go together, because, we all saw Sydney and we know what we can do on that level. So, yeah.
I have a question and a statement. So we've already selected our historic Olympics for next year, for 2025, and it is Sydney. So we are going to be having lots of Sydney conversations next year.
Great.
But you said the Gold Coast had what?
Bogans.
Bogans? Don't know what a bogan is? It's like an Australian redneck, basically. Yeah. Nicest way of putting it, essentially. Yeah.
Thank you. Now I'm ready for Brisbane.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There you go. Brisbane, not so much, but like again, I actually like the Gold Coast. It's a great place to go. But you have the district there, Surfers Paradise, which if you ever see the postcards with the tall skyscrapers, you've got what they call the meter maids, like the girls in the bikinis, and then the beach blonde hair surf guys. Like it's a bit trashy though at night when it comes to like the nightlife. It's sort of what we have schoolies there, so all the the high school kids who have graduated go there and have a big get drunk on the beach, and not a good reputation at that time of year. But maybe something like like a spring break, like a Palm Beach kind of area. You know what I mean? Like it's a great area, but can have a bit of a dodgy reputation at certain points. That's why Brisbane don't really like to say they're part of the same place, because they are technically two cities, but it's just kind of blending into one. So, yeah. But Sydney, I'm excited for that. I look forward to here. I might know some people that can talk to you about that.
Sign us up.
TKFLASTAN, how are they looking for Paris in terms of their athletes? Are they winning lots of gold? Is going to be a successful games for them?
It will be. Well, we have some people going. Like we said, B-girl Sonny Choi is going. Race walker Evan Dunphy from Canada.
Yes.
He is going.
Great
and
guy.
he's
We've had him
gonna
on a
be,
couple of times. Love Evan.
He'll be in 2 events, so that will be very cool. Who else? Because a lot of it is now we're waiting for some trials to happen.
Yeah, so all our athletics people, we have to wait. And I'm already thinking like Paralympians. I'm like, oh wait, the Paralympians have qualified.
Yeah.
Matt Stutzman and some of the others. So I think it's going to be good. I think we're going to do better than Tokyo just because we have a larger team going this year.
That's good.
I don't know where we'll rank on the country table.
I'd be intrigued. We should do a comparison because, like, we don't call ourselves anything. I don't know, Cherry Stan. I have no idea, but we're just team Off the Podium. And yeah, we obviously have a pretty bad habit on this show of a lot of guests coming on and then not doing too well at the Olympics afterwards. But I literally have, outside of Jack Wallace and the Paralympics, have never had one of my guests go on to win a gold medal. So I'm the cursed one. But we have interviewed a lot of athletes who are going to Paris. And, we've got Jess Fox on the books now. So I'm hopeful that maybe my gold medal drought will be broken. So, it'll be interesting to see the medal tally.
Before Beijing, we had a stretch where all of our Beijing athletes were getting hurt and or sick.
Mm.
And Jill and I would just get on a call and want to cry. I mean, it was because I get very attached, and I've said this.
I was going to say you do, don't you? You get very attached to your guests and their performances.
I do, and then we continue to watch them. And
Yeah.
sometimes we literally now at the Team USA Summit, we've met their parents and we
Yeah.
watch their social media. And Josh Williamson, who is TKFLASTAN #1, got COVID before Beijing.
Mm.
He did actually get there, thankfully, but there was a lot of that. So thankfully, so far, we haven't had a lot of that. I don't want to jinx us because we've still got, a month and a half, 2 months to go. So let's just, as long as they get there, I just want them to get there.
Do you have an athlete that you got on the show that maybe then went on to get a medal or something that kind of was unexpected, and then they're kind of like almost like your baby, like they're the one that you discover? We have that with Ali Lutit and Abigail Strait, 2 Canadian ski jumpers who we got on months before Beijing. They were part of the bronze medal team that got Canada's first ever ski jumping medal. And particularly Ali Lutit has gone on to win world championship medal. Now she's like one of the best ski jumpers in the world. And we went from having her on the show with barely any listens and nobody knew who she was, to now probably our most downloaded interview and viewed interview on YouTube, and just she's a big deal now. So do you have like athletes that you've had that have gone on to things that maybe before they went on to things they were only known as a keep the flame alive guest?
I mean, the first one that I think of is Erin Jackson. She's a speed skater.
Yeah.
And we talked to her when she was just she surprisingly qualified for Pyeongchang. And we talked to her at that time, and she had just transitioned from being an inline skater to an ice skater. And then at Beijing, after she won her gold medal, she was everywhere. So that's probably the first one that comes to mind as kind
It's
of
fun though,
we've
isn't it?
watched you since you were little.
Like when you have like a band or like a singer that, you've always liked, and then all of a sudden they become like huge, but you're that person who's like, I liked you from the beginning. I feel that way. Like when you get very attached to your guests on your show, but particularly when they are, starting out or something and then they go on to that success. It's not taking away from when you get your Johnny Weirs on or, people like that on. It's great to get, highly successful people on like that, but it's just there's something different when you're there from the beginning, right?
Agreed. It's fun. It's fun just watching them. And I'm sure you've had this experience when you continue to interact with them on social media and they
Yeah.
respond to you.
Yeah.
And I think I said this the last time we were on the show. This is never what I thought I'd be doing at this point.
Yeah.
And I am so lucky to get to do this and talk to these amazing people and meet some Australian broadcaster that I never would have gotten to meet, and spending 2 months in Paris. And the Olympics and Paralympics have done this. So it's not just the athletes that get to do this amazing stuff, and meet these amazing people. We get to do this too. And we're so lucky to get
And
to
we
do
we
this.
definitely are. And it's also, I think, the community that, with the Olympic podcasting, because again, I'm sure you get it as well. It's a question about like, oh, I didn't know there was an Olympics podcast. So that's a thing. And obviously we're in that period right now where all of a sudden a lot of people are suddenly doing Olympic podcasts, aren't they? Like a lot of the big networks are doing them, the newspapers, and that sort of stuff. And we all know deep down that they're going to disappear after Paris. We're not worried. But it is that level of that community that, I do a lot of podcasts. I'm involved in a lot of different fan communities. But the Olympics community it's never toxic. It's engaging. You talk to people of all ages, of all races, of all countries, of all backgrounds. It's the most diverse, interesting of all of the fan communities that I'm involved in with my podcast, and it's such a great community because, again, as you say, I think like meet great broadcasters who do this, and we can come together and do a collaboration. And I'm not going to be able to do that in some other podcasts, because the rivalry is too strong. All knows your competitor. So, yeah, and we are very lucky. I know we talked about this last time, but to be able to sit here and talk to Olympians, just like you look up to these people when you're growing up. These are insane athletes, and yet they're just normal people, and you can send them a message and say like, "Oh, congratulations on your World Cup medal," and they reply back, "Thanks." It's just like, cool. It's pretty cool.
Ben, thank you so much for getting back together. We're sorry Colin couldn't be here for the fun, but
Glad you are. I'm fine with you not being here. It's all good.
But I'm so excited that we'll get to meet you in person in Paris, and we'll hopefully have some kind of weird collaboration thing that we can do there as well.
I 100% expect we will, and it's such a pleasure to do this. We've been talking about this for a little bit, and obviously perfect timing to do this. We will do it again, be it also in Paris, but also other ones. If we come up with an idea that I think we came up with last time that we still can't remember what it was, we'll do something. But no, it's a pleasure, and really looking forward to meeting you and seeing your coverage there, not just for the Olympics, because you're obviously sticking around for the Paralympics. We're only there for the Olympics, but it's always a pleasure. Keep up the great work, and I also look forward to trading a cherry pin for a TKFLASTAN pin.
You got
it. You got it. All right. Thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ben. You can find Off the Podium on the podcast app you're using right now, and they are at Off the Podium Pod on social.
So we've got some amazing interviews coming up, and we want to share it with the world. So listeners, we want to get the word out as we're coming up to Paris 2024. Share the show with a friend, put it on your socials, do a review. All those things are such a great way to share the show, help us out, and get more people as citizens of TKFLASTAN.
Definitely. And also, if you subscribe to any podcast recommendation newsletters or any newsletters about podcasting, or even any fun newsletters in general that would maybe talk about podcasts to listen to in the run up to Paris or during Paris, let them know as well, because they will be interested, intrigued, and maybe feature the show in their newsletter.
So you can send the link, flamealivepod.com. Je ne préparerai pas.
Oh, that's okay. It's okay that you are not ready. I feel not ready. I feel considerably not ready, and we still have a few weeks to go. I can only imagine what they feel like in Paris. That's
And I gotta say, I think I just did that pronunciation like it was Italian. I will be so ready for Milan. My brain wants to say everything in French like it's Italian.
Okay, we have a podium. This is using the Eiffel Tower as inspiration. So these podiums look to be gray, and the front has a lot of what looks like the metalworking from around the bottom of the Eiffel Tower where the arches are that leads up to the just above the base kind of thing. So it's got that kind of intricate detail. Right now they're gray colored, so maybe they will be gray in Paris, and the sides of each tier say Paris 2024 on them. And they're also angled, so it kind of gives the aesthetic of pointing toward the center of the podium, toward the gold medal.
The
Toward the
gold
gold medal.
medalist becomes the top of the Eiffel Tower
Exactly,
in this
exactly,
structure.
exactly.
Well, it's a great little design, disappointing in the color if it really does stay gray. Because they have such fantastic colors as part of the scheme. Why is this not pink?
I don't know, or blue or something, because it just it looks a little flat to me, but maybe in the actual execution it'll look different. The Paralympic one is a one level thing with it. Okay, so the Paralympic podium is slightly different. It also has the front of the podium also has those nods to the Eiffel Tower, but it is a one level podium. The front of the podium, however, has a raised section in the middle, so it has the appearance of a gold medalist, and a whole podium has a wheelchair ramp attached to it. So it's a wider podium front to back, and that can accommodate more wheelchairs.
So you've
And
basically made it, as they've done throughout Paris 2024, matching Olympics and Paralympic design and as close as possible, taking that same design and just making it wheelchair accessible. Fantastic.
exactly. We have some news about the official film of Paris 2024. This will be directed by Emmy-winning brothers Jules and Gédéon Naudet, who did you watch their documentary about 9/11?
I don't watch any documentaries about
Well,
9/11.
I'm sorry. I realized that you probably didn't know this. Listeners, if you have not seen their documentary about 9/11, particularly if you were too young or not born when 9/11 happened, it is so amazing. I got sucked into watching it again last night, and I just you can't watch it because it's way too close to you and your family. But they had been doing a documentary about firemen who were on probation, the probies, and they happened to be with ladder number 1 in New
Oh,
York. So they were already working on a documentary, and the call comes in for 9/11, and one of they split up because one of them's following the probie, and the other one was with the chief, and he goes, "Can I come with you?" Because nobody really knew what happened when the first plane hit, and the chief goes, "Yeah, just stick with me." So he is in the building
wow.
during the whole thing, and it's absolutely devastating. It's a must-see documentary movie. They also did, Notre Dame, Our Lady of Paris, and November 13th, Attack on Paris. So, this is not gonna be your typical Olympic recap film.
Clearly.
They're actually gonna try to get away from the disaster stuff that they're known for. So it's going to be the story of how Paris, the city, and France, the country, came together to host the games. So they're gonna have like this fly on the wall style documentary again, telling stories of people behind the scenes, like we like to do, and athletes. I'm wondering, hey, Godet brothers or No Day brothers, if you listen to the show. Bonjour.
We will talk to you later.
The final product they're putting together will be a 90-minute feature and then a 5-part television series that will be 52 minutes episodes each. The series is going to air on France Télévision, and they're going to have 3 episodes before the Olympics and 2 after the closing ceremonies. So get your VPNs ready, man. Find this. So they are currently shooting now. They started shooting about 100 days out, and they're just so much work is going into this movie. It's going to be fascinating. I'm
And
really
that's
excited.
a super fast turnaround for them. So this is really different.
It is very different. And for the 90-minute feature, It sounds like they'll also have access to all of the OBS feeds. So yes, there will be sports elements of it, because I don't think you can have a documentary about the games without featuring the sports. But they're really going to a huge effort to tell more of the story. And the IOC was on board with this, and really was looking for a different way to showcase how they put together games. And I think this is the perfect team to do this. Speaking of movies, the Olympic torch took a detour to Cannes Film Festival.
I saw that. What a great way to I mean, that's what you want the torch relay to be, right? To encompass all the things that people know the country for. So go to Cannes, go up the steps, don't set them on fire, but just make that appearance as part of the French culture. I mean, it's so perfect.
But the Flame had a job this time. It was there to accompany the premiere of Mikhail Gamrazny's documentary Olympique, La France des Jeux. This movie features 3 generations of French athletes aged 20 to 100 discussing France's special and unique relationship with the Olympics, and it also features many Paralympic champions as well. And this is just like a side job for the Flame, because it's going to go back to Cannes on for the real leg of the relay on June 18th. And we found that out through Variety. Did you I distinctly remember you asking what Barbies would be out for the Olympics.
I did. I can't remember. I think I did this article for the newsletter originally when the Barbie movie came out and the history of Olympic Barbies, and it goes back to the 70s, and Barbie has been an Olympian many times in many sports. And then they came out with the Shiro line where it was famous women as Barbies. Christy Yamaguchi came out most recently, but now, thank you, Mattel, we've got a whole list of Olympians from many countries, many sports who are going to be Barbies. And I got to be honest, Barbie, podcaster Barbie, I'm here.
Right? I'm with you on that. Barbie has announced 9 dolls to honor trailblazing athletes from around the world. These include Venus Williams, tennis player, Christine Sinclair, Canadian soccer player, Mary Fowler, Australian soccer player, or football, if you prefer to call it that, Estelle Mosley from France, who is a boxer, Alexa Moreno from Mexico, she's a gymnast, Rebecca Andrade, a Brazilian gymnast, Susana Rodriguez, from Spain, she's a para-triathlete, and Federica Pellegrini, an Italian swimmer, and Eva Svoboda, a sprinter on the track from Poland. So we will have a link to the show, or link in the show notes for where you can see what these Barbies all look like.
Welcome to TKFLASTAN.
This is the time of the show where we check in with our team Keep the Flame Alive. These are past guests and listeners of the show who make up our citizenship of TKFLASTAN, our very own country.
Noelle Malkamaki defended her para shot put title at the Para Athletics World Championships in Kobe, Japan.
I was so excited because I knew this was happening. We put up a lightning round on our blog, on our website with Noelle, and I'm so thrilled for her. Karate athlete Tom Scott is competing at the Pan American Championships in Uruguay.
Millie Tapper won the Australian Table Tennis Olympic Qualification Tournament, so she will officially be at her 3rd Olympics in Paris.
And Ollie Hogbin and Blythe Lawrence are covering the Rhythmic Gymnastics European Championships in Budapest. So if you're watching on feeds, you might hear some familiar voices. And that is going to do it for this episode. Hey, if you're going to Paris, let us know what you're doing, because we're starting to get some messages from some of you and letting us know your plans. And we would love to figure out when we could meet up or run into you and say hello in person.
You can find us on X, YouTube, and Instagram at Flame Alive Pod. Send us an email at flamealivepod@gmail.com. Call or text us at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT. Chat with us and other fans on our Facebook group and share your Paris plans. Keep the Flame Alive podcast and sign up for our weekly newsletter with even more Olympic and Paralympic info at our website, flamealivepod.com.
On Monday, it is Memorial Day here in the US, so we are going to put together a little medley of para-athlete interviews that we did at the Media Summit across a wide variety of sports. So be sure to tune in for that. We had some really fun conversations about a lot of different things, and you won't want to miss it. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep the flame alive.